Hey guys, welcome back to another Gonk Gang video, and I've got a really special video here today. I've got a good friend of mine from Team Enigma itself. You can call me Al, also known as Alessandro. Do you want to introduce yourself, mate?
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job there already. You can call me Al. You may know me from commentating lots of different Stars Limited events. Appear on some YouTube channels here and there as well. And yeah, I'm part of Team Enigma and one of the original members of Team Enigma. So I've been on it for quite a while now, and one of the jaded older members, we'll call it. But yeah, I love talking about Stars Limited, so excited to be here and do another set review.
Great, no, thanks for coming along. Like I said, me and Al have known each other for a while now. Since kind of Swoosh got started, we got to know each
Ooh.
other, and we've become good friends. And it was kind of his idea to come on and do a set review with us. So I thought we'd throw a video together. I'll just run you through how this is going to work here. So as you can see on my screen, we've got me on one side and Al on the other, and we've also given out 1 to 3 star ratings for all the cards. 1 star being kind of this isn't really a card that we're looking to play. 2 stars we're interested in it and we're going to talk about how it's can be used maybe more niche. And then 3 stars is kind of like this is an all-star card. You're going to be wanting to play this. It's probably one of the better cards from the set. And then we've just given out some brief awards, the gold, silver, and bronze on what the top 3 cards are from each perspective. The overrated card, a card that we think is maybe getting a bit too much hype and doesn't see much useful to us too. And then, of course, we've got Al and Sam's pick, where it's just a card that we've particularly enjoyed trying and testing out, or we think is kind of sneaking under the radar and we want to push forward. So if we're, with all that, I think we'll just get started and go straight to the first leader. This is just briefly how the
Sounds good.
stars will work here. So, this is the first card in the set, the Chancellor Palpatine leader from the Spotlight deck. He can search, through the top 5 cards for a plot and put it in his hand. And then when he flips, he kind of deploys and puts out a ton of pressure at once. So, the ratings for this, I've gone ahead and given it 2 stars. And Al, I think you have done the same.
Yeah, so I think he's a really interesting leader, one of the more interesting leaders of the set, actually, because the ability to put so many resources, use so many resources when he flips is obviously really powerful. He's
Yep.
very similar, he puts me a lot in mind of Kylo from Legends of the Force, where you can just flip him, and then usually when you flip him, you're going to put so much pressure onto the board that you're probably going to win. The problems I have with him, and the reason why I've only given him 2 stars and not more, is because, first of all, I think his searching for the top 5 cards of your deck, it does nothing to affect the board, obviously. So it
Yeah,
means
yeah.
that drawing cards is all good and well, but if you're playing a slow leader, you really want them to defend you well and affect the board. So the fact that he doesn't do that doesn't help him. And then even when you flip, unlike with Kylo, where you can defeat units, capture units, create this huge sentinel, I think Chancellor Palpatine actually has a harder time stabilizing on the turn that you flip. If you're against Sabine, for example, I don't think you just instantly win the game when you flip Palpatine. I think
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
still a window there where they can still win the game.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything you said there. It's so reminiscent of Kylo Ren, the 7 deploy blue villainy leader that kind of dumps everything onto the board and all his resources into one action. But like you said, Kylo has Sentinel. He kind of literally locks out the ground arena. Or, if you're playing in some other colours, he can even attack immediately and end the game instantly. Whereas Palpatine kind of just vomits onto the board and it's kind of, can you deal with me? It kind of gives that window of opportunity that maybe Kylo shuts off, in my opinion.
Mm.
And then, like you said, the action ability, you have to pay 1. And although you are kind of drawing a card, it is a plot card, which are normally kind of, understated or underused for their cost because they're supposed to come out in one action, the action cheating, card draw, and stuff like that. So definitely an interesting leader, but one that I think has a few problems, but probably we'll see at least some play. I think some experimentation.
Yeah,
Cool.
agreed.
So we'll move on to the next one. We've gone for Jabba the Hutt here. This is the other blue villainy leader of the set. He kind of plays around with damaged units and throws around some damage, and then the real star I think is his flip side, which is kind of when a unit survives damage, he gets to deal that much damage out once each round. And I've gone ahead and given him only 1 star, sadly. And Al, you've done the same. So why don't you tell us why you've given Jabba 1 star?
Yeah, I think so. A 2-8 for 5. The first thing you've got to look at whenever you're evaluating any leader is the stats, right? That's probably the most important thing of any leader is the stats. If they've got bad stats, usually they're not gonna see play unless they have an exceptionally powerful ability. I think a 2-8 for 5 is actually quite poor because it doesn't actually fight for the board very
Yeah.
well. It doesn't put any pressure on your opponent or put very much pressure on your opponent. So even though he gets sort of 10 points of stats for 5 resources, which I
We
suppose
normally see
is
about 9, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's pretty good in that sense, but you need the the division right. A 3-7 is a lot better than a 2-8, for example. So
Infinitely better. Yeah.
um, yeah, so I think his stats are quite poor, and both his deploy side and his undeployed side, I think the ability is actually quite hard to make use of.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not hugely powerful. There's no way to abuse it, and for Premier constructed, you really need to abuse leaders.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think his flip side is definitely the more impressive side. I think his actual leader ability is really quite awful. You have to have a damaged unit, and then maybe if it has a load of damage, you deal two, but you have to still pay the one. Like, I feel like if that was free, it would have still been fine. And then his flip side's a bit more impressive, like you said. He does have slightly more stats than the normal 2-7 or 3-6, but I prefer the 3-6 or a 3-7, obviously. And then I do like his ability of like when a unit is dealt damage and survives, like if you ambush into something, you're essentially getting almost like double damage. He's pulling double weight, but I also feel like blue villainy is like the worst color for this. Like probably
Yeah,
would have been better in yellow or green here. Um,
100%.
so unfortunately, a bit of a poor leader, but definitely obviously a cool character. Might see some experimentation, like stuff like Death Trooper kind of works nicely, but I just don't see it really working out for constructed.
And that
Cool.
actually that reminds me why I was thinking, why have they reprinted Death Trooper in this set?
Yep,
Because for
that's
some
why he's
reason they've
here.
picked that. Yeah, there you go. It's obviously for limited and
Yeah,
sealed
yeah, he's the
for
common blue
Japan.
villainy leader as well, so you'll find both of them in your
Yeah.
packs quite often. So I think that's the synergy
Mhm.
they're going for there. But yeah, sadly not the leader, I don't think, not the one for constructed. So we'll move on to Lamasu, who is the third blue villainy leader, obviously because Palpatine was the spotlight leader, who plays around with upgrades. He lets you play them for one less on a non-vehicle, but it does take a damage. And then he flips on 6 as a 3-7, which is a little bit understated for that flip cost. And he lets you play upgrades from your discard pile, which is an interesting take on it. I've gone ahead and given him just the 1 star here as well, and you have as well. So I think this is just a case of what are you doing? What are we doing here? Like we're playing with upgrades in blue villainy. Like why wouldn't I just play Kylo? I guess at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, Llama has actually impressed me a little bit in
Okay.
testing. A few people have played it against me, and actually, it seems reasonable in certain matchups.
Okay.
The problem you've got though is that with Llama, because there are some decks that really struggle to deal with tall units.
Yeah. Yeah.
Upgrades are just really overpowered against them. Sabine, for example, Sabine really struggles to deal with upgrades, early upgrades in particular,
Yeah.
before you can get to the ambush Poe. A turn two General's Blade has caused Sabine problems for the past sort of couple of sets.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Lama Su has potentially a good matchup in that situation.
Yeah.
The problem being that with your leader, you can't really have a leader that's only good in very specific matchups because your leader, obviously, you get every game. Unlike certain cards where you can side them out, or whatever, you obviously can't with leaders.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you need a leader that's good against, has game into the field. Whereas Lamasu, I mean, you're sticking upgrades on something, if your opponent bamboozles it or, whales you or whatever they end up doing to you, or just clears your board. If you're against a control deck and they just clear your board, then Lamasu's doing nothing.
Yeah, he's
So
literally
I
begging
think,
for a blowout, right? Like you're gonna stack
exactly,
all these
yeah.
upgrades on one unit, make it absolutely crazy, like, and then it gets answered once, and your game plan falls to bits.
Yeah, and I mean the stats as well. A 6 deploy 3-7 just isn't good enough. Even though
Yeah,
you can get the upgrade back, and that's pretty good. Like the problem is, even if you're against like Sabine, as long as your opponents manage to save their ECL, they can always just wrecker it and kill it. And I know, that doesn't mean the card's unplayable because it dies to Wrecker, but it's
yeah,
an important thing to take into consideration because 5 deploy leaders don't die to Wrecker in the same way because you get a turn to actually act with them, whereas
yeah.
6 deploy leaders do. So yeah.
Yeah, he's weirdly understated at 6 as well, like 3-7. I guess it's because he kind of has like pseudo recursion card draw. They were kind of worried about that, but I just feel like the 3-7 stat line's a real letdown here. Although I do like his synergy with, like, obviously cost reduction should always be considered in card games. He does have that on his leader side, which is nice. I just don't see him taking off in the way unless going tall is the way to go. I think he's unfortunately just going to fall short of viability here.
Something that just probably worth pointing out
Yeah,
is that we're evaluating these cards in terms of Premier now with
yeah,
all 6 sets in play. But I mean, once the first 3 sets rotate out, these leaders that seem subpar now will all get a new lease of
yeah, a
life. Now, it
huge
doesn't mean
boost,
to
right?
say that yeah, it doesn't mean to say that Lamasu's going to be good, but it just means that just because something's unplayable now doesn't mean you should write it off forever because
Yeah,
all the most powerful cards in the game basically are going to rotate out
yeah,
soon.
100%. We're going to lose a lot of staple leaders, a lot of staple cards, and maybe new strategies emerge from that with new leaders, which will be an interesting point for the game to see whether it can adapt to that, and maybe these like more niche leaders now become more to the front. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. As you said, we are evaluating them how they are coming into the game right now at the end of the rotation cycle.
Hmm.
Yep. So we'll move ahead on here, and we'll go to Leia. I'll let you introduce this one.
Yeah, Leia Organa of a secret bloodline. So she, on attack, you can disclose any one of the aspects, and if you do give experience token to a unit, it doesn't share an aspect. So the restriction on that's really easy, honestly. Like, it's not hard to do that. So basically, you just get to give experience tokens wherever you like, and
Yep.
then for her undeployed side, you're just disclosing almost any card from your hand and giving experience token to something else. So as long as you're not on like a mono deck, you should be fine. Now, this leader, I think it's worth. I mean, this set review is obviously for Premier,
Yep.
but I think it's worth pointing out that she, I think, is by far and away the best leader in Limited in this set.
Undoubtedly. I mean, I went ahead and played her in my pre-release on launch day, and went undefeated basically because she just literally is the reminiscent of Snoke from the last set, another great limited leader, and even back in set one, the likes of Tarkin. Just giving out an experience reliably for one resource when you're playing with like suboptimal curve and cards is just very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. She's, it's just funny. I think almost Star Wars Limited has a bit of an experience token problem where in Constructed, most of these leaders are just, I think, in fact, none of those leaders have been playable in Constructed, really. I mean, Tarkin a little bit, but,
Yeah,
Obi-Wan, Leia, Tarkin, Snoke, none of them are very good. And then in Limited, they're just way too good.
they're
So I
always
don't know how they're
bonkers.
going to, I don't know how they're going to, balance this moving forward, but they could do with really trying to fix that in some way. I don't know how, but, it just turns out that when the game is so streamlined and constructed, experience tokens don't really do very much. But in
Yeah.
Limited, when you're trying to work with nuts and bolts, it's so good.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like I said, obviously we're rating on constructed, so I've gone ahead and only given a 1 star myself, and then Al, you have done the exact same. I
Yeah.
think that as we said here, probably the best in definitely sealed, maybe draft two. Obviously, draft you can tailor your deck a bit more, so there might be some more strategies that are more viable there. But like you said, I think in constructed, this is just also a very boring leader. Like this is just we've seen this already 3 other times. I don't see her seeing much play here, especially with Ray around. But once again, maybe when Ray goes, this is the premier given experience leader because Ray's been successful. But I do prefer Ray's restore 3 stats though.
Oh yeah, Ray's so much better than this.
Yeah,
It's not even close. So yeah,
exactly.
you're absolutely right. There's no reason to play this until Ray rotates out.
Yeah, that's the only time you'll consider her. So we won't spend too much time on her. We'll jump straight into the other blue hero, which is Satine Kryze. She heals your own units, but you have to deal some damage to base here, and then she has a really interesting flip stats of 0-8, but with restore 4. Now I say interesting, it's actually incredibly boring. It does nothing but heal your base, and I've gone ahead and just thrown a 1 star rating on her. And Al, yourself?
Yeah, I give it a 1 star as well. I
Yep.
will say that before when this card was revealed, there was a member of Team Enigma who shall remain shall remain nameless for their own protection, who thought this lead was going to be really strong. They're like, "Oh, it
Oh,
stabilizes
okay.
so well against aggro," and I was like, "No, listen, I'm sorry, but if there's one thing I can tell you about any card game is that when you don't have any power and your opponent can value trade into you easily, it's always bad."
Yep.
And once again, in testing, Satine has shown exactly she's completely unplayable. I mean, not only does a 0-8 with Restore 4, it's a really bad stat line. It may look like, oh, it's pretty good, but it's a really bad stat line because it doesn't
Yep.
actually affect the board. Just healing doesn't do enough, right? Because you need to clear your opponent's units. So that's not only is that a problem, but her undeployed side is so abysmal. Healing 2 damage from a unit, if that was just the end of the text, it would already, I don't think, be the best in the world. It'd be
Yeah.
okay. But to deal that to your own base, I just
Yeah,
think it's
and
terrible.
there's like no
Terrible.
synergy with hurting your own base. Like there's like 2 or 3 cards in the game,
Yeah.
and obviously the only other thing is like the Anakin leader is the only thing that's ever really cared about the damage on your base. I think
Yeah.
that the fact she has to damage her base feels almost pointless. So you'll never really use that ability unless it matters to heal a Sentinel at the right time, and
Hmm.
then. The deployed side just has no board presence at all. Yep, you're restoring 4, and I think she's a pretty good upgrade platform. Like stick a dark saber on her or a +3/+3 general's blade. Like that's all right. But now you're investing a whole turn into buffing up your leader. It can get easily blown out, and just 0 powered. Like you're just gonna get value traded. She gets hit twice by like some mediocre units, and she's gone.
Yeah, I mean, Constructor just doesn't go that way, really, right? Where
Yeah,
you have, especially if she deployed on 4 and was like a 0-6 or whatever, maybe it'd be different. But deploying on 5 means your opponent's already, in the aggressive decks, they may have already deployed the leader, but they've already got things on board that are going to fight this. So they're not going to allow you to stick an upgrade on it in most cases.
yeah,
Imagine just like there's so many ways you can defeat. Honestly, I can't even come up with an example because everything in the game just
You could
defeats
just
her
name
really
80
easily.
cards that just kill
Yeah,
this.
honestly, like generic 3/3 turn one play, just like I mean, anything you want just defeats her. So
Yep.
even if she had like 2 power, she was a 2/7, it would be so much better than this. Or like, I don't even
100%.
a 1/7, but yeah, just 0 power is just not good enough.
Yeah, just not the one, I don't think. I think she'll probably see some experimentation because people will be excited to try and like play this super long stally game in the blue hero. But I think ultimately there's just so many better choices in that color pairing, or playing another leader with a blue base. You know what I mean? You,
You
you,
can
you
just
can
play Yoda, honestly.
you
Yoda's
can
just
just play
really good.
Yoda. You can just play Rey. I mean, Rey's got Restore 3 as well, and a way better
Mm.
ability. And once again, I just don't see this working out in constructed. And I also don't think she's that good in sealed either,
No,
especially because she's a
I
rare
don't see
leader.
any place for him.
No.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously why they put her in rare, but I mean it's one of those leaders that I just don't see any application for her at all.
Yep, agreed. So let's move on. We've got our first green villainy here. We've got Colonel Yularen, who's kind of like Leia from set 1. He lets you action cheat by attacking with a unit, but you must then attack with a unit that costs less. So a bit less restrictive than Leia in the deck building, but a bit more restrictive on the board, I suppose. And then his flip is a 4/6, which I think is nice. It's not a bad stat line. We've seen that in the past do quite well on the likes of Bosk and stuff like that. And he lets another unit attack after him as well. But I have gone ahead and only given him 1 star, and I believe, Al, you have done the same.
Yeah, we're in agreement so far.
Yep.
Yeah, Colonel Yularen. I mean, an awesome scene. I think in Andor.
Oh yeah,
I
cool
think he only
character,
appears in the
awesome
one.
scene.
Yeah, he only appears in the one scene, I think, if I remember right, which
I
is a
think
shame.
so.
I would have liked to
Yep.
see more. But yeah, I mean, so it's a cool kind of moment in time in the lore. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, I was always really down on Leia, and a lot of people for a while thought she was good, and now we don't see her at all. But I
Yeah.
think even when she was fairly popular, I think she was quite bad, honestly. I think Sabine's always been better than her.
Yep.
And she just fulfills the same role but doesn't get energy conversion lab. Now, Yularen here, like, yes, his stats are okay. Yes, you can action cheat, you can do all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I think for an aggressive leader, which he clearly is, he's
Yeah,
an
yeah.
aggressive, trying to keep the initiative leader, these are not the colours you want to be in. Command villainy just doesn't have. Even they keep giving more and more support to it every set, and I still don't think they're even close to getting enough for an aggressive villainy command deck to really take off. It just doesn't have the tools. It doesn't have the reliable ways to end the game,
Yeah.
and I don't think his ability a lot of the time doesn't really do very much, to be honest. So
Yeah,
a
I
bit
think
like Leia.
I think you'd be lucky to use this a couple of times in a game, and even then, I don't think it's that massively impactful. I think the only reason to really consider him is that he's got a decent flip stats and lets you action cheat on attack, but I just don't see this working out. I just don't know why you play him over other stuff. And like you said, it's weird. They keep pushing maybe like a green-red villain aggro, and it just never works out. And it's also like a color combo that's been carried since set 1 by like a handful of cards that every set gets quite little, to be honest. It just gets like 1 or 2 card upgrades, but yeah, I don't see Alarm working out. I don't think he's horrible, and he's pretty damn good in draft and sealed, but for constructed, I don't see it working out.
Yeah, this is the position we're in. We've got 6 sets, so a
Yep.
leader being pretty good to maybe slightly above average is just not good enough.
Yeah, it's just not good enough
How many
right now.
leaders is now? Like it's like 18 across 6 sets is like what's that? 108 we're
Yep.
gonna have. 108 leaders is just way too many for this kind of guy to see any play.
Yep, agreed. So we'll move on to our second green villainy leader, Dryden Voss. He's a 7 flip for a 5/7, and he kind of gives your units ambush when you discard a card that costs 6 or more, and give an ambush to 5 or less, and then his flip side becomes kind of like uncapped. You can give any unit ambush any number of times per turn, kind of thing. Slightly underwhelming stats, but I still think a cool leader, and I've gone ahead and given him the 2-star rating. Al?
I can't remember. What did I give him? I think I
You gave him 2 stars as well.
I did, yeah. It's a bit of a generous 2 stars, honestly.
Yeah.
I think he does have some potential. He's definitely cool. There's a lot of application. I think the reason why I bumped him up a bit, even though I haven't seen anything successful with him
Yeah.
yet, is because there's so many applications to giving a unit that cost 5 or less ambush.
Yeah.
Even discarding cards, there's a lot of synergies that you can make, work with that.
100%.
Like Kylo's. So I think there is a way to build him where you can potentially craft a deck that actually works, but as a baseline, discarding cards from your own hand, a 7 deploy leader with bad stats, like it's a pretty hard sell.
Yeah.
To see him doing well, but I do think there is potentially an avenue where he could be just about a playable leader.
Yeah,
I don't think he'll dominate the meta or anything.
Oh, agreed. I think he's niche, but he's got enough going on where I'm interested. You know what I mean? You're discarding cards that can have certain payoffs, stuff like Palpatine's Return or Salvage, getting them back later for a discount, and then you're giving stuff ambush, which is obviously an amazing keyword. You can give stuff that doesn't have ambush. Like that would almost never have it normally, and now that it does, it kind of feels kind of crazy. Like stuff like Talzin's Assassin having ambush is kind of crazy. That's essentially 7 damage, and it probably lives on the way back as well. And then his flip side on capping, you can now give ambush to stuff like Blue Vader. Obviously, he's bonkers with ambush and terrible without. I think you can definitely craft some kind of deck. I've been playing around with a blue villain variant or even blue force. I think he's got enough going on where I'm interested. I just think it's going to take a long time to see what actually comes of this because, like you said, he's underwhelming flip stats. He's slow, although he does affect the board. He has to sacrifice cards in hand, and that's not great for a slower deck. So I think it's going to take a while to even find out what the best color combo is with him. Like, anyway, I think there's stuff you want to give ambush in blue, red, and yellow, even double green. But I think he's interesting. That's why I went for 2 stars myself. Like you said, I think it's more on the generous side of 2 stars from both of us. I think it's going to take a while to see what happens with this guy, but I'm definitely interested.
Yeah, indeed.
Cool. Next, we've got quite an exciting leader here. We've got Bail Organa, the green hero. You can pay 1, and essentially, if a unit was defeated, you can put a resource back to your hand, so you can kind of recycle something that you resourced earlier. And then he doesn't have an epic action. He has an action of discarding 2 cards from your hand, and he gets to deploy on 4 then as a 3/3. And then whenever you play a card from resources, you heal 1. That's obviously meant to work with the plot mechanic from the set, or even Smuggle from Shadows of the Galaxy. But definitely a really interesting leader, and from what I've seen so far, I've been really quite impressed by Bale, so I've gone ahead and given him 3 stars. Al?
Yeah.
I think you've also gone ahead.
As well.
Yep.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Absolutely. I think he's probably the second strongest leader of the set, which will come to the strongest shortly. But yeah, really, really powerful, really interesting. Basically, the 2 main synergies you can do with him is Shadow Collective Camp, I think it's called, where you draw a card every time you flip him,
the 25 health.
Okay. Yeah, because that way you're only discarding 1 card effectively, so that's reasonable. But then the main synergy with him is the droid manufacturing.
Yeah, that's the insane one.
You get 2 1/1 battle droids every time you flip him. Now, the reason why I think when we were first testing him, the guy seemed absolutely insane. But then I was like, okay, let's calm down, let's test some aggro decks into him, and he really fell apart, I think, personally. So the problem I've got with him is that he's got infinite value. He's great into mid-range decks. He's great into control decks. But because he's double green, he has very few ways to affect space and defend space successfully. And he also really struggles in Sabine, honestly, because you never get enough time to get use out of the value that you generate from him. So he's basically just, you deploy once and then the game will end after that. So it just really struggles. And double green has historically been a very, very weak aspect. So the fact that it kind of has to be double green to get use out of the droid factory, I think is his main weakness. Now I do think he's absolutely got potential, and he's going to be, I think, a meta player because of how successful he is at dealing with mid-range and slower decks. But yeah, the fact that he has such a heavy weakness into aggro that's really hard to shore up. It's very difficult in those colours in double green to find any way of trying to improve the deck's matchup into space.
Yeah. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. The fact that he is a green leader and wants to play with a green base, you're forced into double green, which, like you said, it's probably the weakest double aspect we've seen across the history of the game so far. Obviously, not many double aspects have ever really made much of a splash since back in double yellow days, but I think that he's got such an interesting epic action, infinite value. If you play more grindy, maybe with the Shadow Collective Camp with red, you get access to Red Hero, which is a very strong aspect combination at this point, after all the sets. Or if you play with the double green droid manufacturing, try and just absolutely vomit out loads of units onto the board and go more aggressive style. I think he's got so much potential, and he's kind of like what I think Trench was meant to be. Trench is this infinite deploying value leader, but I just think he was so slow in the fact you had to pay for the deploys. Even his first deploy had a cost. It felt awful to play, and like Trench has seen like literally no play. Which is why I was very hesitant when I first saw Bale. I think I was very down on Bale. I was like, what is this leader design? Like, he's so understated, and the ability doesn't seem massively impactful. Although the leader ability is, in the longer games, actually pretty damn good. You can resource big stuff like Home 1 early and just grab it back later for more infinite value. He is essentially representing the king of value here, I think, in terms of decks. Like you said, he will grind out a lot of games against mid-range value decks and then more control decks, but obviously, you've done quite a lot of testing with the team, and it looks like he may struggle into aggro, like you say.
Yeah, 24 HP, and again, but you don't have to play him with Droid Factory,
Yeah,
but I think to get the most out of Bale, you really do. And this is the main thing, the main problem I've got with him as well is he looked at first like post rotation, this guy's going to be crazy, but then I realised you need the factory. Like, without the factory, discarding two cards to get a 3/3 doesn't ever end up being that good. It's just
yeah.
when you discard two cards to get a 5/5, split across three bodies, that's a lot better. And yeah, but to get that 24 HP base, that's the lowest HP base in the entire game, and it makes you incredibly vulnerable to getting rushed down.
Yeah, that's. I didn't even think about the fact that like we're going to get one set with the droid manufactory. This guy might go absolutely crazy. He might not actually make a splash, and then he's going to lose that and the Shadow Collective camp, which were like the two
Yeah.
things we were abusing with him. So unless we get a rare base in the future that works with him, we're literally losing all of his synergy after one set. So it might be a rough time for Bale. He might get a brief spotlight in the sun here, but I do think he's really interesting. And we've both gone ahead and given him 3 stars, so we're both clearly excited to play around with him and experiment. So we'll move on to the next leader. You can introduce this one.
Yeah, Mon Mothma forming a coalition. So she's a 5 deployed 3/7. She can ignore the aspect penalties on non-villainy official units,
Yep.
both on her undeployed and her deployed side. And then when she deploys, other friendly official units get +1 HP. So I've given her 2 stars, I think, if I
Yep.
remember
I'll go
rightly.
ahead and show. I gave 2 stars, and so have you.
Yeah. Yeah, so at first I was really excited about Mon Mothma, and probably more so than Bale,
Mm.
because the way I looked at it was that, okay, yes, she's probably going to be in double green as well, whether that's with Droid Factory or maybe another base, I don't know, but she can be in double green, and then
Yep.
she gets to pull in all the officials from other colours. So she
Exactly.
reminds me a lot of Hera Syndulla from Spark Rebellion, except that she doesn't have awful stats. She actually
Yeah.
has good stats, a 5 deploy 3/7 with, a buff to HP.
Yeah, they actually gave her relevant stats. Normally, these like not ignore aspect leaders have like the most horrific deploy of all time.
Exactly, yeah. So that, I mean, if Hera would have been a 5 deploy, she probably would have seen a lot more play.
I
So,
agree.
so yeah, I was really excited about her. She's kind of been overshadowed by Bale, though, I think,
Yeah.
because really, while she does allow you to bring in the officials from the other aspects, she doesn't have anywhere near the kind of same abuse factor of like Droid Factory or anything like that. She only gets the one deploy,
Yeah.
and she suffers from a lot of the same problems as Bale, I would say. I mean, because you're in double green, those official units you're getting from other aspects, while some of them are quite powerful, none of them really help into space. I mean, the all ground units, for example, things like the double yellow Palpatine, the 2/6. That we have seen absolutely no play. You can play with her to great effect, which is really nice.
Yeah, you can finally
Because you
play
can
that
ignore
guy.
her.
He's not
Exactly
seen
right.
he's not seen even slight experimentation, but finally they literally printed a leader that went you can play him.
Exactly, yeah, and he is really good with that. He is
Yeah.
really good with her, but again, it's just the same problems as Bale. And honestly, the real issue with her, and the reason why I didn't give her a higher rating, is because if you're going to play Mon Mothma, you probably should just play Bail Organa instead.
Yeah.
She does get access to the renowned delegates. I think it is. That's the 6 cost official that allows you to heal 2 for every official you got in play.
Yeah.
So against aggro decks, that does really help, but sometimes you just don't even get there. Right? There are some
Yeah.
decks that win the game before that even comes down, which is a slight problem. So yeah, it's a shame she's come into the set with another leader in the same colours that does a much better thing of what she's trying to do. But yeah, I think she's pretty good. She's pretty
Yeah, I think she's pretty good. Like I said, we both given her 2 stars. She's pretty middle of the road here. I think she has potential. I think if you play with the droid manufacturer, you flip her out. You play the double yellow Palpatine on turn 4, going into the 5 resource turn. You flip out Mon. You get your 2 droids that are readied. You can even play the Chancellor Palpatine out of aspect,
Yeah.
and then you bring out 2 readied spies. And then next turn, you throw Unity of Purpose on the board, and you just win the game. But it depends. Is that a reliable? Probably not. And also you're in double green, so when you're not doing that, you're probably just floundering around with random stuff. And although you do get to play some good officials out of aspect, like I will actually give them this, like the officials this set, they've actually, for a tribe, they normally do quite poorly, but I think they're pretty solid this set. There's definitely some all stars. 2-drop Bail Organa, the 3-drop Senator Chuchi. Like you can bring these into your double green deck and you'll be really happy about it. But I think she's going to be a bit of a one-trick pony where you just kind of go for this Unity of Purpose deck, and unfortunately, I think right now Bale probably just does this better. But maybe once again rotation comes along and maybe Mon can stick around, but she does lose the droid manufactory as well. So
She's not as reliant on it though. I
yes,
think honestly, I think you could run her with any base and she'd actually be okay. I think that the because she isn't as reliant on it, I could definitely see her surviving rotation. I mean, a
yeah,
lot of the officials have come from this set. So obviously we lose the Palpatine, which is one of the best things she can
yeah.
do, and we'd also lose Unity of Purpose, which is a real shame. That's gonna, because I think that's Twilight of the Republic.
No,
So it's a shame
Unity's from Jump. So we're
Is
keeping
it?
that. Yeah,
Okay.
we keep
Okay.
that.
Fantastic. Okay. Brilliant. Okay. Well, there you go. Well, that's brilliant. Well, I think she keeps all the key components. That unlike Bale, so there is definitely a chance that she's going to be a force to reckon with post rotation.
Yep, definitely. Gone ahead and given her 2 stars each here, so we're both decently excited about it. We'll see how it plays out. Next, we've got Dedra Meero here. She can pay 1 and either deal 2 damage to a unit, or you draw a card. The opponent gets to decide. And then she deploys nice and early as a 2/5. Finally, Villainy got a 2/5 for deploy, which is exciting on its own. And she also gains raid 2 if you have more cards in hand. So I've gone ahead and given her 2-star rating here. And Al, you've gone ahead and given her 3 stars actually. You're quite high on Dedra. So why don't you take it
Yeah.
away if you're so excited?
Yeah. So, well, okay. So it's a difficult one to break down because initially I wasn't really high on her because I thought, well, drawing cards typically a more value control style ability. Deploying on 4, potentially as a 4/5, on the attack, much more of an aggressive stat line. Not really good in the slower games. So I thought, well, she's kind of confused. And then cards like I'm Your Father or whatever haven't ended up being that good because giving your opponent the choice usually, of doing something is usually a really bad idea. And I think
Yeah.
Dedra does really struggle with that because, if I'm playing against Dedra, there are some games when I look at my hand and think, okay, I can actually outvalue her here. I'll just let her deal 2 and it's fine. And then she's just a 4 deployed, pretty weak leader.
Yeah.
And then there are some, if she doesn't have more cards than you, she's a 2/5, which is quite weak. And then there are some games I'm like, okay, I'm going to rush you down here, so I'm just going to let you draw the cards. And you can draw a million cards, it doesn't matter because I'm going to beat you before it
Yeah.
matters. So there is a real problem for her. The reason I've given her 3 stars is because I think that between either like a double red aggro deck or pairing her with vigilance and making a slower control deck, I just feel as though I have this feeling that there is going to be some build of her. And they are completely different decks. They're not even close.
Yeah.
To, one of them is an aggro, one of them's full aggro, one's full control. But I feel like, and this is why she's so interesting because you can do both. But I feel like there is going to be some version of her that will end up actually seeing play, just because whether it's with Tarkin Town, which makes her ability a lot better, or whatever it ends up being. I just feel like the lead has so much potential. Deploying on 4, we know is just the gold standard for where you want to be.
Yeah.
And as an aggressive leader, deploying on 4, if you can deploy on 4 as a 4/5 on the attack, that is actually really good. So
Yeah.
I think she's got loads of potential. I haven't seen a build yet that I'm really impressed with, but I'd be very surprised if she doesn't end up being somewhere in the meta.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously you're a little bit higher on her than I am, but that's not because I don't like her. I think she's a really interesting leader. This is a cool design for a leader. Props to FFG for that one. I like the choice mechanic. Obviously, you always get the worst outcome, but at least they're both somewhat relevant. And then I'm just glad that we've got a 4 flip with decent stats and can actually put some pressure on. I've played around with the Tarkin Town variant, like you said. It makes that initial ability so much more tense, where like if you deal the 2, your unit's getting wiped. That's essentially up to 5 damage. You can even kill stuff like a Gungi, which is normally out of range of Tarkin Town. Or you get to draw a bunch of cards and then flip out early as a 4/5, and then she also works really nicely with the plot mechanic because you can kind of keep those cards in your hand and then just play them from your resources. She's definitely a super interesting leader, probably up there with Bale for me for this set. I'm excited to try and experiment with her, and I think you basically said the right thing. It's either going to be this super hard control blue variant, almost like a Bosk blue, or going to be like this super fast aggressive, I'm going to draw a ton of cards and try and vomit them onto the board, Tarkin Town variant. But definitely a really cool leader here, and also an awesome character. So
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think as well, just a couple of other things to point out.
yeah.
Really interesting things with the Tarkin Town thing. You might think, okay, well, if my opponent's playing Tarkin Town, the aggressive version, I'll just let her draw cards. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
And that's true. Paying 1 to draw a card is not very good. But then we get the aggressive negotiations, which we'll come to later on in the set review.
Yes.
Which is the perfect card for an aggressive deck where your opponents let you draw loads of cards.
Yep.
So, and there's also that double red guy as well, Papanoida, I think it's called. He's
Yep.
also going to come up. So there are lots of ways to actually make drawing cards for an aggressive deck really pay off, which have come in this set. With
Yep.
previous sets we didn't have that. So that's really nice.
Yeah, we'll obviously get around to both of them, and they're both really key cards to that Dedra double red aggro. Because normally, like you said, card draw feels irrelevant for an aggro deck, but she makes it relevant.
And I could just see her replacing Boss, right? The Boss doesn't actually end up doing that much, right? He sometimes lets you heal for 8 instead of 4. Sometimes he lets you draw 4 cards instead of 2. But his ability and his stats doesn't really do that much towards the game plan. The kind of Bosk Blue was basically just a control deck with a couple of red cards and Bosk, and I think you could easily replace. We haven't had a very good control leader at all, so I think you could easily replace Bosk with her.
Yeah, a lot of people would use Bosk, and you'd throw him out as a stabilizing tool. You got a 4/6, and you just threw him into a unit. And if you claimed a double bounty and you drew 4, or you healed at 8 or whatever it was, that felt great. Dedra has a way more relevant ability, and also flipping out at 4 can even be an even better stabilizing tool against the likes of aggro. So I do see her replacing that super hard control red-blue style, and then it's interesting that somehow she has the availability to go aggro as well. So we're clearly both excited about this leader, which is really cool.
Yep.
Next, we are going into Governor Pryce. You can take this one away, Al.
Yeah, I'll be short and sweet. Governor Pryce, Tyrant of Lothal. You can ready unit for one, ready token unit for one resource, which is not a good ability. And then she gets +1 power for each ready token unit. Again, not particularly good ability. She deploys on 6. Yeah, I don't think it's leader's playable at all. Deploying
Yeah.
on 6 is enough to already turn me off her, but honestly, like neither side of her is good at all.
No, like let's go ahead and show. I gave it 1 star, and you did too, Al. I just think this has so many like little things that just don't like have pushed her out of like viability. Like, why did she flip on 6? It'd be so much better if she flipped on 5 as a 4/6. Why does readying a token unit cost a resource? Why does she only get +1/0 for every ready token? Like,
Exactly, yeah.
there's so
That's
many
the
like
one that gets me.
it
Why is
just
it not just every
annoys.
token?
Like, I remember when this got spoiled, and like, you get that initial rush, and you're like, I'll play this, and then I'll play like I Am the Senate, and she gets like +5 attack, and it goes insane, and it's like, no, that doesn't actually work. Like, every like she should have deployed on 5. She should have cost nothing to do her action. She should get 1/0 for every token, not every ready token. It's just
She doesn't even create a ready spy, right? She
no,
could have
she
created a
doesn't
ready
even buff
spy.
herself on attack. Like everything about this leader just feels kind of wrong, and it's a shame because I think there's a cool design here somewhere where it's like a big payoff for tokens, and like readying a token unit that could be interesting, especially when you throw an upgrade on a token. Like now you get to get this crazy value. Like you put a fallen lightsaber on a spy, that'll feel amazing. But that's just not going to happen because A, they're so susceptible to dying as well, and then they're susceptible to tons of interaction because they cost 0. They don't go back to your hand. So I think ultimately this is just not the leader.
No,
Cool.
not
We'll
at
keep
all.
it short and sweet on her. Next, we've got Cassian. Definitely more of a you kind of leader, Al, so why don't you introduce this one?
Yeah, Cassian Andor climb. So 6 deploy, 6/2 rebel with overwhelm. Friendly units that have damage an opponent's base basically get hidden, so they can't be attacked. So basically, can give out hidden to units even though they're on the board. And
Yep.
then while you have initiative, he can't be defeated at all, pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like Chirrut in that way. It's kind of invulnerable, but only while you have initiative. So I was initially really hyped about Cassian. I would have given him 3 stars if you would have asked me day one when he was revealed, but I think I've gone down to 2 now, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken.
So I've gone ahead and thrown the 2 star rating on him, and I think you did too here.
Yeah.
You know,
So
go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So the thing is, like, at first I thought, okay, you could just play him like a Sabine shell, and then you just get this like 6 deploy leader that works great with Cinta, who will come to, so you can
Yep.
immediately flip him and attack with him. That's great. Against control, you just make sure you keep claiming initiative, and they can never deal with him. All this kind of theory that in theory he seems quite good, but the problem is that when you cost 6, when you deploy on 6, especially as an aggro leader, it just creates so many issues. Like if you, I think must have played about 20 games into Cassian with Sabine, and I've lost almost none of them because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, when you deploy 2 turns earlier, it doesn't matter what you do, what your ability is, how good you are. Like the game ends before you can make use of Cassian
Yeah.
so often. And yeah, I've seen some people trying with Data Vault, and that I think that's a lot better because the games go a bit slow. But again,
Okay.
it reminds me a bit of Bale in the sense that he's really good as a mid range. He does great into mid range, pretty good into control, but against aggro, he just has no hope.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like this card has a one-track game plan. It literally says it on the front side of the card. Like you hit base and you can't get your unit's value traded. You keep the initiative for Cassian, and you just push damage to base with the 6/2 stat line that can't be defeated. You want to use action cheating effects like Fleet Lieutenant or Cinta, like we talked about. It's a really interesting leader. I just don't know if right now he will see any play with Sabine around. I feel like she is just so much better. Flipping out on 4 versus 6 is just a whole different world. She can represent so much more damage before Cassian can even flip. And then maybe post rotation he has more wiggle room. But even
Mm-hmm.
then, the 6 deploy just I feel like that's just being more mid-rangey. Not flipping out early is just going to really hurt him here. But he has such an interesting line of text that just can't be defeated, basically. That there's something there, surely.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think at the end of the day, with rotation, he loses a lot of the action cheating stuff, which kind of sucks for him because he's not going to have a window really to use it. He needs a window where Sabine isn't in the meta and he actually gets like Fleet Lieutenant, Rebel Assault, whatever, but he's not going to get those. So So yeah, it's a shame for him that way. I do think he definitely has potential, but and this like can't be defeated ability is so interesting because even if your opponent claims and they take the initiative, then you can just like stick an upgrade on him or whatever, end the game potentially, and then there's ways to abuse that. So he is super interesting. It's probably good for the game that he's not good or not amazing because at the end of the day, this kind of like face hunter style of just slamming into your opponent's base every single unit and not bothering trading sucks, I think. And as much as people complain about Sabine to me is the ultimate like interesting deck because she does go aggressive, but she often, if you're a good Sabine player, you often play slower. You
Yeah.
often clear your opponent's units. Trading happens, I'd say, more than going base in a lot of games. Whereas
Yeah.
Cassian, you should basically never trade, which I think is is not the best.
Yeah, like you're literally ignoring his front side ability if you're trading. He's kind of like the opposite of Luthen, who will be coming up in a second, who kind of has no text if you hit the base. It's interesting. I think there's definitely something here. I just don't know if post rotation he's going to lose too much synergy, but also he doesn't have to compete with Sabine, so I think he's going to be a wait and see leader. But people will experiment with him, and like you said, he has such nice synergy with upgrades as well. Like the whole can't be defeated text. If you can give him more health and more attack, it's only going to get worse for the opponent. So I think there's definitely some potential here, and I think it's a sweet idea for a leader. I'm glad that they're really trying with some different stuff in this set, which is I think the main thing I want to say. Like I do really appreciate the interesting leader designs this set, and I do think one to look at is Cassian. So we'll move ahead on to the next one, who we just spoke about, and this was Luthen. He's kind of the antithesis to Cassian, where he says that basically when a friendly unit is defeated while attacking, you can exhaust them and you get to deal an additional damage to any unit or base. And then he flips it to 2/7 on 5 and does the same thing but uncapped and goes up to 2 damage. So I've gone ahead and thrown just 1 star for Luthen, sadly. And Al, you've gone ahead and done the same.
I think we've only disagreed on one card so far, and
Yep.
funnily enough, I gave it more than you. Which,
Yeah.
I'm the biggest pessimist in
You're the
terms of
cynic.
review cards ever. So, yeah, so I'll have to see if that continues. But yeah, another little gripe I've got before we talk about Luthen is this subtitle thing because in Star Wars Unlimited they want you to like. As a commentator, for example, like you kind of need to know subtitles, or you need some way to identify leaders. So, like, I don't want to sit there and go Han 1, Han 2, Han 3. I want to say like Han Audacious Smuggler, but the thing is, they make the subtitles so long. Like,
the whole sentence.
Don't you want to fight for real? Like, do I have to say, Luthen Rail? Don't you want to fight for real? Like, I shouldn't have to say 7 words to do a subtitle. Like, come on, like, so can I just get that gripe out?
That is a unique take from the commentator now. There, I hate his subtitle.
I really do. But yeah, in terms of him as a card, Luthen Rail's one of my favourite characters. Stellan Skarsgård's like amazing. Who doesn't
This
Skarsgård?
is a top 5 Star Wars character right here.
Absolutely, yeah. I think for me, he's really up there with like Obi-Wan as like the best characters of all time. I absolutely love him, and I think they did him dirty. Honestly, I think this leader is so hard to make work. Like you said, trading units in this color combination is not very good anyway. A 5 deploy 2/7, just even though a 5 deploy 3/7 is like premium stat line, 2/7 is a huge difference. It makes a huge difference.
2 just does nothing. It just doesn't affect the board. It doesn't even kill like the most basic of guys.
No, exactly. And, most turn 1 players have 3 HP now anyway, right? So there's literally very few things. He kills a spy, sure, but there's very few things he does. And yeah, exactly. So I just think that, there's just not enough ways to make him work. You can't play like an aggressive deck with like Heroic Sacrifice and stuff, and that new Valiant Commando, is it the 3/3 that can like sacrifice
that defeats itself,
because, yeah, because at the end of the day, like you don't have enough cards with that text to make that work. So you have to play him as like a slow, more mid-range trading thing, and he just doesn't have the stats to support that. So,
clearly, like they're pushing you to try Heroic Sacrifice, K2SO, that Valiant Commando, whatever it's called. But like, I'm trading units, but then I'm hitting base sometimes, and then like. I guess they want you to just trade away and chip away at the base and then go for a big finish, but he doesn't even offer a finish. Like, he's a 2/7. He needed to have more stats. I mean, it being uncapped on the flip side is nice, and the fact it goes up to 2 damage is definitely relevant. Like, you can ambush in for, like, a Cloud Rider can do essentially up to 5 damage. That's not bad at all, don't get me wrong. But I just don't see what the game plan here is, especially with Red Hero, which typically wants to go aggressive.
I agree. And I know I was just talking about how Sabine likes to trade sometimes, but she also likes to go face as well.
Yes.
Luthen doesn't have that option.
There's a happy medium here, right? Like, Cassian only wants face, Luthen only wants units. Like, why not just play a leader that does both? Like, Sabine hits the base with their ability, and then her units can trade. So, yep. Sadly, I think he's being cannibalized by his colors a bit here, but still a cool leader to a degree, and a very cool character. So, next we've got a yellow villainy leader, Slime Moore. She can pay 1 1, and if there's 4 or more exhausted units, she creates a spy. And then on attack, she's a 3/6, and she deals 2 damage to an exhausted unit. I must admit, this does not excite me at all, and I threw out the 1-star rating.
Yeah, same for me. Yeah, the if there are 4 more exhausted units in play, it actually isn't like super hard to do. So it's
Yeah,
kind of
weirdly, it's not
reminiscent a
that
bit of
hard.
yeah, and it's kind of reminiscent of Vader in that way we get to create the token, but Vader doesn't have to pay for it, right? And that one cost on leader abilities usually is a death sentence for most leaders. There are very few leaders that actually pay 1 for their ability and can make it work.
Yeah.
You know, if you think about how many leaders have that option, have the ability to pay 1 for something, usually you just don't want to do that. So yeah, if you think about like other games like I don't know Hearthstone, whatever, like Hero Powers, how often do you actually use it? It's just not that often.
Yeah, it's a curve filler normally. You don't want to be using it.
Exactly. So yeah, usually you don't want to use that side, and then when you flip over to the other side, again, a 3/6, not the best stat line, deal 2 damage to exhausted units, okay, but yeah, she just doesn't do anything special, no reason to play her.
Yeah, I mean, like, paying 1, you make a spy, like, and also, like, creating a spy for 1, like, there are 0/2 on defense, it can die instantly, and it just never did anything. It's poor. If that was a free ability, I still don't even know if I'd be that excited about it. You know what I mean? The fact I have to pay 1, like, maybe I'd be excited.
I'd certainly look at her a lot more.
Yeah.
At least then if you can just constantly every single turn add a spy to the board,
Just pump
it
it out.
really does add up. Then it's just that when you're adding a spy but playing a 2-drop instead of a 3-drop, that's just never good.
Yeah, and then weirdly her flips like all right, like a 3/6 is fine, and then but she gets to deal an additional 2, but like it has no synergy with the other side, like it's completely devoid of any synergy there. I mean, it's worth noting she has the Force. I didn't know that about the character. That was certainly a surprise to me. But I mean, that is relevant to a degree. You know, it enables some Force things, but obviously the strongest one got banned with Force Throw, and I just don't really see any reason to be playing this leader outside of probably draft and sealed. I mean, where she is probably suited as the common leader of the colour pairing. Yep. So we'll move on. Next, we've got C3PO. Go on, Al. You can take this one away.
Yeah, human cyborg relations. 4 deploy, 1/6 on attack. If you control another exhausted unit, you can exhaust a unit. So okay, doesn't really do very much.
Yep.
And then on the undeployed side, you can pay 1 again. There's that death sentence, paying 1. If you control an exhausted unit, you can exhaust a unit. This guy is absolutely terrible.
Yep.
So 4 deploy leaders get a huge boost. It takes a lot for a 4 deploy leader to be completely unplayable and not even worth looking at.
Yep.
But 1/6 as a stat line is completely abysmal.
Yep.
And then having to pay for his ability wouldn't even be that good if you didn't. This is one of those Slimo. I think if it was free, it'd be fine. If this is free, I honestly don't think it's good at all.
Yeah.
I just think that ability is trash. I think his flip side's trash. I think this leader is grotesquely bad. So
Yep. I mean, I think
1 star from me.
Oh yeah, I mean, get to the stars. 1 star. I think that was a pretty obvious one from Al's rant there. I think he has like one thing is like you could play Babu Frick and hit for 6. Like that is literally the one thing you can do. You can throw a bunch of droids in a deck, probably go like even double yellow and go for like cunning kind of like Babu Frick droids double 1-drop. There's something, but you can just play that with any leader. You can just play that with Sabine and just do better. Just what's the point? His leader ability is poo, and his flip stats are awful. Like Nala Say was a 1/7, and that was a horrific stat line. This is worse. So what's the point? We talked about how Luthen's 2 doesn't do anything. Well, 1 certainly doesn't.
No.
Yep. I think we'll move on nice and quick from C3PO then, shall we? Next, we have Padme Amidala, I think one we may be more excited about here. So she says, when you reveal or discard 1 or more cards from your hand, you may exhaust her. If you do, you get to deal 1 damage to a unit. And then on the flip side, she's a 3/8 for 6, and it kind of becomes uncapped. She can deal it any number of times per turn. I've gone ahead and thrown a big 3 stars on it. Al?
Yeah, 3 stars for me as well. I think this is the strongest leader of the set. I wouldn't say unquestionably because I think Bale does give her a run for her money, but at the end of the day, Padme doesn't have the same issue that Bale has, where she just really struggles into fully aggressive decks. We saw how strong Cad Bane was. I probably underrated Cad Bane because he was one of the very first leaders at 6 deploy that actually did something. Could actually keep up, and he's not been like amazing throughout the history of the game, but he's been one of the stronger leaders in the top.
He's been very consistent, right? Like for 3 or 4 sets at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think because this ability paired with Tarkin Town is so good, and I think he does have to be paired with Tarkin Town.
Literally, yeah.
He probably does as well. When Tarkin Town rotates out, all of these ping leaders get so much worse. But the fact that you can kill your opponent's unit turn 1, just because turn 1's the most important turn of the game in most cases, it's such an amazing flip. And it turns out they gave her loads of ways to do it. So there are enough ways in this set, including one that is just absolutely bonkers, which we'll get to later on. But there are enough ways for Padme to trigger this ability. She has basically the same stats as Cad Bane, probably slightly worse. A
Yeah,
2-8
yeah.
with Ray 2 is probably slightly better than a 3-8, but yeah, very, very similar. But just the ability to ping in Tarkin Town is all you need, and she's probably in better colours as well, honestly. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think
like
you're
her a
right with
lot.
that. I think it's, ever since, obviously, ironically, the two leaders that have been banned are both the cunning villainy aspect, but I don't think it was
Yeah,
because the cards were too strong. It's just what those leaders
no,
did. Weirdly enough, it's quite a weak color aspect pairing, so I think this is the better color pairing. Like you said, her turn one, like she got so much support in this set. Like her early plays are like insane in my opinion. Like she can absolutely decimate your turn one play, get a ton of pressure on the board. Okay, she flips late as a 6 leader, but we've seen this work with Cad Bane. You can play an aggressive strategy and use this as just basically another body to finish the game. And
hmm
actually, this is where I gave my first award. I gave it the best leader of the set from me. And Al, I know you did the same. So I think it's an obvious choice. I think Bale is the only one that comes close to giving her a run for her money. But I think on paper this is the base strongest leader in the set. It has the most synergy, it works with good cards already, and it's got a ton of support as well.
Yeah, and honestly, a nice little bonus for her is that she's, I think, more fun than Cad. I know you're a big Cad fan, so
I'll give you that.
to say bad things about Cad, but honestly, like, I think she's more fun, and I think the ability to like biggest problem Cad has is if your opponent's competent, they can really do their best to play around the ability. It's a lot
Yeah,
harder with the double one drop version, but the double one drop version has other drawbacks. But the two drop version of Cad we used to see, it was very easy to just play around the ability. Whereas with
100%.
Padme, it's a lot harder because one, she gets to choose where she puts the damage, which
Yep.
is really good for her. But two, like you've got different ways to trigger it. So like you've got the 2 cost 3/3 warrior of clan order or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
where it's when you attack you trigger it. So that way, you if in that situation you don't just want to pass because your opponent can just play it and then next turn they can get the attack off. And then there's other ways when you actually play the card like R2D2 Faith in Your Friends where then you trigger it. So there's not really a way to play around all of the turn one plays that she
Yeah,
can
yeah.
have,
She
which
has
makes it
options.
so awkward.
Whereas
Yeah,
Cad
so
Bane just has
awkward
to
to deal
slam
with.
a unit down, and like if you don't perform that turn one dance well again as the Cad Bane player, you kind of ruin it. Whereas I think
Yeah.
with Padme, like she can either play a unit that's going to threaten to do it next turn, or she's going to get you immediately, and there's no winning for either of you. So I do think her time might be short due to the Tarkin Town rotation. I think like she
Oh yeah.
only works with Tarkin Town, but I think while she's in the game, I think she's going to basically be, I think, a better Quinlan right now. Not to say that
Oh yeah,
Quinlan's
way
bad,
better.
but
Yeah.
like I think
No,
that
I think he is
she.
bad. I
Oh,
think
okay,
Quinlan's pretty bad.
there we go.
Force throw was just so important for
Yeah,
Quinlan
yeah,
that honestly, if you're going to play Quinlan, just play Padme. She's in the same colours. You play
yeah.
Padme. No reason to play Quinlan.
Yep, and the whole revealing through disclose or discarding, that's always I always find discard decks quite fun in card games anyway, where you're kind of like discarding early for an advantage. I think that's just a cool play
Yeah.
style. So I think Padme is a clear front runner for the set. So we're both quite high on her. Next we've got the other yellow hero leader. Why don't you take this one now?
Yeah, Sabe, Queen's shadow, and I'm afraid she is in the shadow of the Queen.
Definitely.
She's nowhere near as good. I think I gave her two
Yep. So I gave
stars.
her 2, and you did too.
Yeah, it's a very generous two, honestly. I think she does have potential,
Yeah.
but there's a couple of things I want to point out with her. First of all, her undeployed side does very, very little. I think people
Yes.
can very overestimate how good this is. You can look at your opponents. This is a thing that especially newer players to card games will do, where they'll like they'll look at two cards or discard. Oh, there's a really good card. I'll discard that, and then they'll kind of think, oh, I've got this huge advantage. But there's a big difference between your opponent losing a card in hand and then losing a card off the top of the deck, right? Like even though you've affected their hand, you've done some card filtering. You've made their next draw slightly worse. At the end of the day, you're resourcing a card anyway. At the early turns of the game, most cards do the same thing, and Sabe, as an aggressive leader, cares most about the early turns.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think her undeployed side does very much. Her deployed side is far more effective. A 4/7, a 4/6, sorry, on attack, or if only she was a 4/7, a 4/6 on attack is really good. I mean, that's she's got the stat line, she passes them back there, and then being able to look at your opponent's hand and then get the specific card out of the hand that they're going to use to defeat her, a wrecker or whatever it might be, a Poe. I think that is when it is a lot more effective. So I
Yeah.
like her deployed side, but I must say that I do think that she's kind of overrated. I think she's only okay.
Yeah, I think her undeployed side is almost kind of a trap. It looks really good, but ultimately, like, it sounds like a stupid thing, but I almost imagine like those cards in the deck don't exist in a way. Like, you're affecting something
Yeah.
no one knew was going to happen anyway. So it's kind of like it almost does nothing, unless you're going specifically for a mill strategy, in which it technically does do something. But then you're playing a mill strategy, but you have to play units that hit base. So isn't it better to just kill their base? So, it kind of like just doesn't really work out there in my opinion. But her deployed side is way more impressive. Like you said, she kind of passes the stat check just about with the raid 1, and then she kind of gets the busy in their hand, which is a strong effect. And like you said, you can basically stop her from being defeated by looking at their hand and taking the worst thing straight out of it, or they're forced to play it early, and then she can just come out later in the turn and do her thing anyway. So, like you said, I think it's more on the generous side of 2. I think I'm excited about the flip, not so much about the leader side, but it will be a fun deck to run and just be really annoying, I think. I think people will end up hating this leader on the more casual side as they feel like their game plan is getting so disrupted and it's really frustrating. But ultimately, I think if you just played a straightforward game plan against her, she'd probably crumble.
She's one of those leaders, I will say, in her defense, that actually does something against control. Because
Yeah, yeah.
against control, usually they are about specific answers. They only keep the one power of the dark side, wherever it is, the one
Yeah,
takedown. And so she does actually help in that way. Whereas the vast majority of leaders that have ever been printed, especially aggressive ones, don't do anything against control.
It feels like you don't have a hero power, right?
That.
Like so many decks just do not have an action against control decks because they're not playing units. So what are you going to do? Is Boss going to ping nothing? Is Cad going to ping nothing? At least she does do stuff while she's pushing the damage to base. It's just, is it enough to kind of impact the overall game?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, I think against aggro it does very little, if anything. So
it probably does absolutely nothing, and you're probably suffering because of it because you've lost all your power to actually affect the board with your power. So, yep. We'll move on to our first double aspect leader. We've never seen this before. This is DJ Need a Lift. I think we could probably talk about this guy for ages. He's got so much going on, but ultimately it's all very complicated. Essentially, you choose a friendly unit, you play a unit from your hand, it costs 1 less, but the unit you chose now captures it, and then he flips out on 6 as a 4/6 Saboteur, so slightly understated, but all your units that are rescued now enter play ready. I haven't tested DJ much. I've only played him in a couple of games. I don't know if you've had more experience over at Team Enigma. Maybe you could run us through.
Yeah, I think I gave him 1 star.
Yep, I've joined the 1-star club here.
Yeah, he's very interesting, very cool. I like that the design wise great, but I'm not here to talk about design with him. It's more about competitive viability. And at the end of the day, he's not very good. He's not very strong because losing access to heroism or villainy is a big deal. It affects you a lot. You lose access to a lot of good cards, so your deck is weaker. Even though you get the double, you get access to the double cunning cards, that doesn't make up for losing the heroism or villainy. And so he's already on the back foot. And then deploying on 6 as a 4/6 Saboteur, not a good stat line. So once again, he's got a bad point to him there. And yes, you can do this kind of thing where you put the cards under, and or you capture your own cards and you're paying 1, but paying 1 less for them, stuff like that. But it's very cute. It's very interesting. In a practical game, aggro decks are going to run you over. Control decks are just going to defeat your units, and you're not going to do very well. So I think DJ, while in theory he's very interesting, I just don't think. And it could be like Chancellor Palpatine, where maybe there's a perfect build that can be okay, but to me, the safe bet with these kind of really weird, wacky leaders is probably just to say they're not very good. Even though somebody might be able to figure him out, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some absolute DJ mains out there that kind of just try and work out every facet of this character and try and absolutely break it, because it feels like something you could maybe break if you really put some time into it, but I really just feel like you said, underwhelming flip stats. His action, although it is like resource cheating, which is, as we know, like the best thing you can be doing in this game is playing things earlier and stuff like that. It just feels like you have to jump through 50 hoops to get a middling reward, and it feels like your opponent has a ton of chance to interact with you as well. He has like one super synergy card as well, which we'll see later in the set, which obviously only he can use and does seem to work quite well with him. But ultimately, I just think he's probably just a bit too weird to see real play. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed part 1 of the Al and Sam Gonk Gang and Enigma set review talking about the leaders today. Make sure you check out the other videos on the screen above, including part 2 of the set review, and also make sure you leave your likes and comments down below, and please subscribe to the Gonk Gang for more future content. Let us know if we missed anything in this set review, and more importantly, let us know your hot takes down below. Thanks for watching today guys, really appreciate it. Bye bye.